Hello everyone. Welcome to Amrita IS Academy's monthly current affairs series, and we're starting with the next part of our discussion, that is the economy. Now economy, for every month we'll do in two parts, because one of the challenges that we face while dealing with the economy, that is the interrelation of the topics. So what my approach will be, as you can see in this particular session also, so the current context will be supplemented by a bit of basics. So we'll try to go into a bit of basics so as to make that particular topic complete. Apart from that, we will discuss each and every topic with respect to themes. For example, one of the themes is money, banking, and finance. One theme is the fiscal capacity, where we'll discuss budget, tax, for example. One theme will be the balance of payment theme, where we'll discuss the international issues, exports, imports, anything related to that, depending upon what type of current affairs are in the news of that particular month. Then the fourth theme will be this sectors of economy and GDP, inflation, anything related to it. Then the fifth sector is infrastructure, anything related to that. And the last theme can be your microeconomics or human resource development. But majorly the human resource development part will take up in governance, or will take up in your indexes or report, right? So let's start. Starting with the money, banking, and finance and insurance. Now, the first one is the positive pay mechanism. Now, positive pay mechanism, first of all, not a very big thing, but positive pay mechanism is related to the check payments. Okay. So, for example, to deal with the problem of the forged, altered, and counterfeit checks that sometimes being used or sometimes being misused, I should say, the RBI has said if your check is of more than 50,000 rupees, what you can do. For example, I have issued the check. Let us understand the process first. So process. Now I have issued a check, right? Now apart from issuing the check, I'll go to the net banking and I also send the scanned picture. I'll take the picture of the check. I'll send the details on the net banking. So before the check can be encashed by the beneficiary, the details will go to the bank here as well, so that the banks can also verify two times. First the check itself, and the second thing there. If any mismatch is there, they'll get back to the issuer. Okay, this is the mismatch we are finding. You have sent, for example, 75,000 amount. The amount has been changed to, for example, 7.5 lakhs. So it will improve, first of all, the cases of the frauds, and also will speed up the process of the check clearance as well. Because when you have the proper inputs from the issuer on the net banking, it will be easy for the issuer to for the banks also to process the check. So it is for the checks that are more than 50,000 in nature. Now SDFC Bank has been doing it from 2016 itself. Okay, so let's come to it. In the case of mismatch, check will be sent back to the issuer for examination. By following such a system, bank knows the check being drawn by the customer even before this it is deposited by the beneficiary. So before it gets beneficiary deposited that check, deposits that check in the bank will know about it, right? And more than 50,000. That's all. Next, a big topic, that is a priority sector lending guidelines. Now RBI keeps on tweeting, changing the PSL guidelines. Small changes they keep on doing. For example, why it is recently in the news, both in August and September month, they have tweaked the PSL guidelines and they have included the startups also among the PSL category. First thing. Next, they have included the renewable sector as well as one of the sectors that is eligible to get the priority sector lendings. Okay. So you can see here. So RBI puts startups in the priority sector lending basket, expands the lending categories. Now let's get back to the basics. Now this is the overall asset side of the bank. It is called the asset side of the bank, right? The deposits are known as the liabilities of the bank, isn't it? What we have deposited. Now this can be loaned, among which some CRR is there, cash reserve ratio, some statutory liquidity ratio which they cannot loan. So this is the amount that they can loan. In the amount they can loan, they have to fix some percentage of the amount for the priority sector lending. Within that priority sector lending, now RBI has come up with some quotas also, not now, in 2015. Quotas, we'll discuss that. Okay, so this is the getting back to the basics. Now, if we talk about the quotas, among that 40%, okay, 40% first of all is all for majority of the banks. We will see some for 45%, for some it is 75%, we'll see that. But 40% that we need to remember. So among the 40%, RBI recently has tweaked something. So what you need to keep in mind that among the 40%, RBI also designates quota. If you want to remember the figure, then that's fine. If you don't want to remember the figure, that is also fine. Now, for example, for the farmers, they have said 18% have to be given out of the 18% have to be given to the farmers. Within the farmers, 10% now has to be given to the small and the marginal farmer. Before this particular current notification, it was 8%, but now it has been raised to the 10% for small and marginal farmer, and the remaining can be given to the non-corporate farmers. Then 12% has been done for the weaker sections of the society. They have defined some of the weaker section of the society. RBI has defined weaker section of society. Then 7.5% to the micro enterprise among the MSMEs, and the 2.5% to the above can be given to the above categories as well and to the others. For example, if a bank wants to give more loan to the marginal small farmer, go ahead and give it. It does not mean that the 10% is the upper limit. In fact, 10% is the lower limit. That minimum 10% you have to lend to the marginal and the small farmers. Next, we are talking about the categories. So category means all the categories which are lie under the priority sector lending. So agriculture, MSME, export credits, education, housing, social infrastructure, renewable, and all this. Among the MSME, micro they have said 7.5%. For agriculture, they have said 18%, like that. So these are the overall categories. Startups, loan up to 50 crore to the startups are also included in the other category. Okay? Chalo. Now, these are the weaker section of society. This is what recent list I have taken from the very recent RBI notification. Now, first of all, you don't have to remember this list. Just have a look at it, all the weaker sections, how RBI has defined them. For example, small and marginal farmers, artisan, village, cottage industries, beneficiaries under the National Urban Livelihood Missions, self-help groups, person with disability, minority communities, right? So different distressed PWDs and a lot of different categories they have defined. These will be under the weaker section. Those who will get the 12% of the PSL, minimum 12% of the PSL quota. Chalo. Now, if we come to the bank wise, early we read PSL lending from the side of the people who are getting the loans. Now, if we come to the bank wise, which bank will have to dedicate 40%, right? Now, 40% will be given, should be given by the commercial scheduled banks and the foreign banks. Foreign banks with 20 branch or less than the 20 branch, both. We will see how the differentiation is between the 20 branch, less than 20 branch and more than 20 branch. But yes, both of them have to give 40%. 75% has been designated to the regional rural banks, small finance bank and urban cooperatives now. But it is being done in the phased manner. We'll see how. Next. Now, you'll ask that what about rural cooperatives? Now, you see rural cooperatives, that is all the segment of the rural cooperative is the PSL only. So, it has not been defined for the rural cooperatives because their work lies in that area only, the rural cooperatives. Okay. So, that is not put under the PSL lending norms because obviously they are giving to the PSL. So, no need to enforce among them. Then payment banks, no, because payments bank cannot take up the loan activity. Because of that very nature, they cannot be put under the PSL. Then NBFCs, no. Small finance bank, yes, 75%. This can be very key chart while revising your banking sector. Now, let us see this one. This the relay diagram that I have drawn, that is a summary of this diagram only. So, the domestic commercial banks, 40% they have to give total priority sector lending. Foreign branches with less than 20 and foreign branches with more than 20. Okay. Now, what is the difference between foreign branches less than 20 and more than 20? You see here, the branches which is less than 20, they don't have to go for these quotas. So these quotas are not applicable on everyone. Now foreign branches having less than 20 branches, they have 20 branches. How will they go for the small and marginal farmer? It is very tough. Yes, they can give to the startups all the money. They can do that. But these branches, they cannot do it because they have to give the loan according to the quotas that have been defined. Now the next question comes, what is this 40% off? Now this is what you don't have to remember, right? This is based upon the ANBC and the COBE. Okay, so that's not the important thing. Basically, that's the overall credit that is there. Okay, outstanding balance, credit, expenditure. Don't have to remember it, but remember the 40% of the total loan. That's it. That will serve our purpose. Now, coming back to the regional rural banks and the small finance bank, they also have some tweaks in the internal quota. But again, don't go into it. Just remember the internal quota of these areas. Next, we talk about the primary urban cooperative banks. So urban cooperative banks, I said in a phased manner. For example, existing target is only 40%, but by 2024, they have to get to 75% of the total lending. So currently it was 40%, now it has been increased to the 75%. So this is one thing you need to keep in mind. So for all that purpose, this diagram will work. Okay, इसीलिए that's the reason I draw these simple diagrams so as to declutter all these informations that is there. The next topic, related topic, is the priority sector lending certificates. It's very easy. Let us understand by this diagram. Now, for example, Bank A, they have to give PSL loans of 40%, for example. But what they have done, they have lent around 50% to the PSL. So 10% excess they have done. Now Bank B, 10%, for example, 10% less they have given to the PSL, only 30% they have given to the PSL. So instead of getting the penalty on these banks, what RBI says, you can buy the certificates from each other, right? So A bank can give excess of the PSL of the 10 crores to this bank and they can give the money back here. Okay? So they can buy this certificate, priority sector lending certificates, one bank to the other bank. Okay? And it will be driven by the demand supply mismatch. Remember that. It will be driven by the demand supply mismatch. Chalo. Now, under the priority sector lending mechanism, the seller gets the fulfillment of the priority sector obligation and the buyer buys the obligation without no transfer of risk or the loan asset. Now, for example, this bank, the extra it has lent. Now, if that becomes NPA, so NPA's responsibility lies on this bank only, not on this bank. They will get only the certificate. Okay? So this is what you need to remember. So they will get the certificate only and the certificate will be bought and sold at the market price. Just like, for example, IPR player auction. Just like the carbon credit market. Similar to that. Similar mechanism. Next, what we read is a national strategy for financial inclusion. If you have seen our Telegram group, on Telegram group we are uploading our one day one topic series. On one day one topic series, one topic I have taught, that is the financial inclusion. In that topic, I have detailed this strategy. I have discussed this strategy in very detail. Very extensively, I have discussed this particular strategy. National strategy for financial education. So it's the second strategy RBI has come up with. The first, it was released in 2013 and the recent one is released for 2020 to 2025 to creating a financial aware and empowered India. Now the idea is the same. It is more important for the perspective of the mains exam, not pre-exam. Okay, the same talk they have talked. They have talked about 5 C's. They have talked about the challenges that are there in the financial education. They have talked about the basic of the financial education, what needs to be taught. And we have discussed everything in that particular session. So if you're preparing for mains also, you can go and check out that particular session. That session is available on our Telegram group specifically. It is not available on our YouTube channel publicly. Chalo. The next is the Atal Bimit Vyakti Kalyan Yojana. Atal Bimit Vyakti Kalyan Yojana. So this Yojana is under the launched by the Employment State Insurance in 2018. Let us first talk about this particular insurance company. Now, it is a part of, first of all, general insurance. So there is a life insurance, there is a general insurance. There are two type of insurance: life insurance and the general insurance. Now, within the general insurance, you have this corporation, that is Employee State Insurance Corporation, under the Ministry of Labor and Employment. It is a statutory body formed under the 1940 Act, Employee State Insurance Act, and finally this has been created. Okay, first thing. Second thing you need to keep in mind, this scheme is for the employees in the organized sector. Employees in the organized sector against the event of the sickness, maternity, disablement, death, even the unemployment. So if they are employee of this particular organized sector, you will get the benefit of this particular scheme. Okay? Obviously, it's a social security scheme. The next thing is that it is applicable to whom? It is applicable to the organizations having 10 plus people, those who are in this particular organization, this organized organization. So for example, cinema, road motor transport establishment, shops, hotel, restaurant. So 10 plus people should be there, and the wage cap for the people to enjoy the benefit should be 21,000. If you have more than 21,000, you will not get the benefit of the ESI. Okay? And for the disabled people, differently able people, there is no wage ceiling. Okay? So even if they are earning, let's say 24,000, they will get the benefit of the ESIC. Now ESIC is also similar to the contributory insurance scheme. So the contribution is done by the employee and some contribution is done by the employer, but we don't have to go into it. That will be a lot of information that is not required for UPSC. Okay, so it provides a lot of benefits. For example, it provides benefit for the maternity benefit if you are a part of our organization, right? If you are part of that particular 10 plus organization and the wage is less than 21,000 and you want maternity benefit, the company will give you that, the corporation will give you that. Sickness benefit, sick leave is not leave of earning, you will get some medical leave, some medical benefits will also be there. They will also take care of some unemployment allowances, and that is where this Atal Bimit Vyakti Kalyan Yojana comes in. We'll discuss that in detail. Then some in case of a death, your dependents will get some sort of money, and these kinds of benefit these ESIC gives. You don't have to remember these benefits, the specific details of these things. No, not at all. What you need to remember from our exam perspective is these area only: more than 10%, 10 plus organized sector, and 21,000, that is the wage limit. Plus it is under the Ministry of Labor and Employment, it is a statutory body, and this recent Atal Bimit Vyakti Kalyan Yojana, which was launched in 2018. Okay, so the idea of the scheme was, those if they lose their job or render jobless after being employed, so it will provide some sort of a compensation for 90 days. Okay, they will get some sort of a money from this particular organization, so that they have some incoming money while they search for the another job. That is the very idea of the unemployment allowance. But because of the COVID-19, because a lot of people got unemployed, so that is why the government has done a bit of relaxation. Okay? Now earlier they can get only 25% of the average wages that they were getting. Okay? But now they will be getting 50% of the wages. So wages have been increased. Now when they become unemployed after 90 days, they will be getting the money. For example, today you got unemployed. You were earlier a part of an organization. After 90 days, you will get this unemployment allowance. But now government has said, no, after 30 days, you will be getting, and a lot of different provisions. What is important for our UPSC purpose, you don't have to remember these details. Okay? You just have to remember about this scheme, because this scheme is not a very core scheme. It's a very peripheral scheme within the insurance sector also. Within the insurance sector also, it is a very peripheral scheme. So you just need to know under which category it is lying in, for whom, for what are the beneficiaries of this particular schemes are. That's all. Okay, let's move on. So we understood about within the general insurance, we understood about the ESIC. Chalo. Now that's the end of the first theme. The second theme we're going to discuss, that is the fiscal policy. Only one thing that we have to read, that is the transparent taxation honoring the honest platform. So they have launched this platform, that is transparent taxation platform. The words that Prime Minister has said can be very critical, very important for your GS and for your SA, especially for your GS. So, for example, he has said that tax system needs to be seamless, painless, and faceless. He has said that only 1.5 crore people are paying taxes out of the 130 crore people. Okay, so that needs to be done. It is for the income tax department. Remember, it is not for the all the tax department. It is mainly for the income tax department, not for GST. Okay. Next, it has talked, we'll discuss the detail of it. So they have said the taxpayer is assured of the free, courteous, and the rational behavior, because we have read about the tax terrorism, that is the unreasonable behavior being meted out by the taxmen on the people. So, for example, terrorizing them, exploiting them, taking a lot of bribe. For example, the CCD owner death was also said to be caused by the tax terrorism. So, what is tax terrorism? That is the irrational ways of collection of the tax, basically by the taxmen, these IRS officers, and going beyond. So the Prime Minister has said that we have to bank the unbanked, secure the unsecured, fund the unfunded, and the honoring the honest. This can be your conclusions while you write an answer on the taxes, or while you write an answer on the financial inclusion. Emphasis on making the laws and policy people-centric and public-friendly rather than the power-centric. So these are the lines you can note down, the key lines that are there. Okay, a lot of to the students of Amrita IAS, I have been discussing this on our Zoom chats, that you need to prepare some 50-page notes about these things. So you all can note these things in your answer, right? So discussing this, basically transparent taxation platform. So it will bring transparency system, empowerment to the taxpayer, and accountability for the taxman. It has 3 parts: faceless assessment, faceless appeal, and a taxpayer's charter. What do you mean by assessment? So while you do the assessment, you don't have to go to the IT office, income tax office. If you want to appeal, your appeal will be given to a random officer in a random place, and maybe your the identity of the officer will remain unknown to you. So it will be chosen randomly. It will not be given to a particular officer that may have vested interest with respect to a particular taxpayer. Then the taxpayer charter, it talks about, just like a citizen charter, similarly talks about the rights and the responsibility of both the officers as well as the payers. Because now India wants to transform its income tax regime, a direct tax regime overall, because that is having a lots and lots of problem, right? Somewhere down the line in one day one topic, and we can discuss that. Okay? But these are the steps you can mention that we have taken, or at least this particular step we have taken for improving of our direct tax regime. Chalo. So that's the end of the first session of economy. Let's quickly get back to the 5 questions that we have to discuss today. The first one is, this one is 2020 paper. If you withdraw 1 lakh rupees in the cash from your demand deposit accounts at your bank, the immediate effect on the aggregate money supply in the economy will be. So they've asked about the aggregate money supply and the impact on this. Now this question lies, every question I'll tell you lies in which category. This lies in the must category, that you must get it right. You cannot afford to get this question wrong, that if that's a UPSC question. Now, this question, very easy question. You just need to know about the definitions of the narrow money. For example, M1, M2, M3, M4. So narrow money M1, which includes coins and currency in the hands of the public, demand deposits with the commercial bank. M2, which is the coin and currency with the public and demand deposits. Apart from M1, plus the demand deposits in the post office. All these things are very static in nature, so I'm going through a bit. M3, which is the aggregate money supply, which is the most important that is included today. So coins and currency with the public, as well as the time deposits such as FDs and all these things with the commercial bank. Then M4, they include the time deposits with the post office as well. Now you imagine the post office deposits as compared to earlier have reduced in comparison to the commercial banks, right? And that is why they include the That is why the more importance given to M1 and M3 rather than M2 and M4. Now, if we talk about M3, so coins and currency with the public and demand deposit with the commercial bank and the time deposits. Now the question says you have money and you have withdrawn money from your ATM and you have taken the money from to in your hand. Will this impact the value of M3? Answer is no. Arey bhai, it is a sum of all these three things. If you decrease from it, you increase here. So it will make your M3 unchanged. So that is your aggregate money supply M3. So it was a very easy question. You have taken 1 lakh from your ATM, you have withdrawn 1 lakh from your demand deposit account, and that is now in the hands of yours in the cash format. So it will leave the aggregate money supply unchanged. बहुत easy है. It's a very easy question. ठीक है? You just need to know what M3 is, and that is a very basics of Indian economy when we read it. The next question, again, this question is, if RBI decides to adopt an expansionist monetary policy, which of the following things would it not do? Most important portion is here, not do. ठीक है? Means you have to talk about which of the followings will not lead to the expansionist monetary policy. First, cut and optimize SLR. Second, increase the marginal standing facility rate, cut and bank rate and the repo rate. Now, this particular question also lies in your must category. You can pause the video and try these questions. Okay? Again, this question lies in your must category. Now, if you talk about expansionist monetary policy, when we take up this monetary policy, we take up this monetary policy to fight the deflation. Okay? When the market is not doing well, when the deflation, the prices are not or falling, or some sort of economic downturn is there, what we follow an expansionist monetary policy. So what we try to do, expansionist monetary policy means putting more money into the hands of the people, make it easy for the banks to lend the money, है ना? That is how we'll get the money in our hand. And what it will means, it means that more money to lend or the cheap source of money for the banks. Now, coming back to the monetary policy tools. So monetary policy tools, we all have read the quantitative tools and the qualitative tools. Among the quantitative tools, we have SLR, CRR. So if you reduce this SLR and CRR, as you have seen in the PSL also, you will get more amount to more loanable funds. So obviously the money supply will increase. The bank rates, repo rate and the MSF. Bank rate is basically, almost you have read, bank rate is a long-term money given by the RBI to the banks without collateral. Then repo rate, for the short term, money has been given by RBI to the banks with government security as a collateral. MSF, that is very short, for very short period, money given by RBI to the banks, specifically to the banks. So just related, all the things are related to each other concept wise. So if you reduce these things, the banks will get easy money from the RBI. So that is also expansionist monetary policy. Open market operations, RBI buys government security and injects money into the system. That is also an expansionist monetary policy. So these are the examples of the quantitative tools. Now when we come to the qualitative tools, we have this margin requirements and loan to values. So the more money is loaned, if you increase the loan to value, for example, you have gold and the RBI has said now more than 80% you can take collateral from 70%. Now the gold value of 1 lakh, earlier you can take loan of only 70,000. Now you can take loan of the 80,000. So you get more money into your hand. So increasing the LTV means decreasing the margin requirement. So my discussion with you in this particular session, these are current affairs session. First of all, we all need to realize it. This is not basic economy sessions. The idea here is only to revise the basic concepts. The idea is to solve questions. And obviously, if you think that this is too much, or if you're not able to relate to what I'm trying to say, please go back to your basic economy course and revise the qualitative and the quantitative tools. You will find everything there. And then come back to the session and complete it. But still, I'm trying to make it easy for you. Even if you have read it once, it becomes easy for you to take it from there. Okay? Chalo. So the answer will be 2, because cutting the statutory policy, it's an expansionist monetary policy. Cutting the bank rate, again, it's an expansionist monetary policy. So these two will be wrong. This wrong, this wrong, this wrong. 2 is only the right answer. Chalo. Again, it was a must question. Next question is the forex reserve. This is not a previous year question, but this is also again a must question. Let us see the question. Currently, India has the second highest forex reserve in the world after China. The value of India forex has crossed $5 billion. After the foreign currency assets, the gold accounts for the highest share in the forex. Okay? This is again, I will say, if the question comes, this will again be in the must category. That should be right if the question comes in the UPSC. Chaliye, try this question. You can pause the video and you can try the question. Now, if we talk about the forex across the country, so highest is of China, more than $3 trillion of the forex reserve they have. Then after China, we have Japan, Switzerland, Russia, and remember, India is not the second country, but the fifth or sixth country. It keeps on fluctuating. We have more than 5 billion, 5.8 billion precisely. This much forex reserve we have now. ठीक है, चलो. Now, so this is what we have crossed. ठीक है. Now, few more details about this. So first we compare it a country-wise thing. So China, Japan, Switzerland, then after India, and then if we talk within RBI, within our country, the components of the forex reserves. So this is on the November 9th, very recent screenshot I have taken. So highest is of the foreign currency assets in the form of the dollar, in the form of the yen, in the form of the other dollar currencies. Then the gold, okay, you can see the amount. Then comes the reverse position. That is the reverse tranche, it is called. We'll discuss that. I have discussed that last year and the question has also come in this UPSC this time. So that is the around 34,000 crores. Not crores, yes. And then comes the SDR, that is the special drawing rights. Okay, currency by the IMF. So remember this order also. So highest is of foreign currency, then gold, then reverse position, then SDR. Now let us see the question. First, India is the second highest forex reserve in the world. Answer is no. Second, value of India's forex has recently crossed $500 billion. Yes. After foreign currency, gold is the highest share in the forex. Yes. So answer will be 2 and 3, not the first one. Chalo. Next question is one question we do of history or the some basic static. Which among the following notable literary works were associated with Krishna Deva Rai? तो अमुक्त, मल्यादा, सत्यवादु परिणय, जमवती कल्याणम, मलदसा चरिता. So which of the following are the literary works associated with the Krishna Deva Rai? This question lies in the category of strive or to the no in this category, but I will say this lies in the strive category because this is where if you work hard you will get the returns of your hard work. Okay, try to answer this question and we'll move on. You can pause the video. Chalo. Now if we talk very quickly, let us brush up our Vijayanagar Empire very quickly. So basically Vijayanagar Empire comprises of 4 dynasty: Sangama, Saluva, Tuluva and Arividu. So Krishna Deva Rai lies here in the 3rd dynasty, Tuluva dynasty. This is the extent of the Vijayanagar Empire at its zenith. Okay? Now, if you see, started by Harihar and Bukka in 1336. Before that, they were the vessels of the other dynasty. Now, about this Krishna Deva Rai, some details. He was the 3rd ruler of the Tuluva dynasty. He was not the founder of the Tuluva dynasty. Also, remember that. A lot of titles he have: Lord of the Kannada Kingdom, Andhra Bhoj, because he was a scholarly king. Then King of the 3 kings, that Muru, Raya, Ganda. These things can come and they can ask you who is the leader we are talking about, or who is the king we are talking about. Contemporaries were Bahamani. Everybody knows the battles between Bahamani and the Vijayanagar Empire, and the Gajapatis of Odisha. A lot of traveler has come into this reign because such a prosperous reign. So Domingo Pias, Portuguese travelers, Fernando Nunes, and Sayyid Ahmad Al also. So just remember the travelers. Travelers are very very key in your prelims preparation. Now coming to the his literary achievements. So he was also a patron and a scholar. Patron means he patronized people, and himself he was a very good scholar. So his age, he was an Andhra Bhoj, and his age was said to be the golden age of the Telugu literature. So among the Telugu literature, very important thing, Ashtadiggaj. 8 Telugu poets, it was an assembly named as Ashtadiggaj. He himself, Krishna Dev Rai, written a work that is Amukta Maldaya. So Amukta Maldaya is one of the very important scholarly achievements or written by the Krishna Deva Rai. It was about the wedding of the Vishnu and the Andal. Okay? Then greatest poet was Allasani Peddana. He was a father of the Telugu poetry. He was one of the Ashtadiggaj. Okay? Chalo. Next, Kannada literature, he himself did not do anything. He patronized someone. If you want to remember the name, that's fine. Otherwise, leave it. Tamil literature, he patronized the Tamil poet Haridasa. That is also you can remember. Sanskrit literature, he was a patron and a scholar. He himself has written a lot of work. For example, Jamvati Kalyana. Jamvati was a queen consort of the Lord Krishna. Then Madalasa Charita, Satvayu Parinay, and Rasamanjari. So these are the Sanskrit works of the Krishna Deva Raya, who himself was a patron as well as the scholar. Now the answer of this question is all the 4 of them. So this one is a Telugu. This one is, all the 3 of them are Sanskrit. थोड़ा सा मेहनत करनी है, a bit of hard work you have to do. That is why I put this into the strive category. Now you may think why I have taken so much pain in discussing all these things and whether these things are relevant or not. Yes, they are. Not only prelims perspective. Let us see one question from 2016 of the mains. In 2016 mains, they have asked this question that Krishna Deva Raya, the king of the Vijayanagar, was not only a accomplished scholar himself but also a great patron of learning and literature. What you will write in it if you don't have the facts in your hand? And this is where you have to establish the continuum between your prelims and the mains, especially for art and culture, medieval modern history and geography. Art and culture, medieval history and geography, modern history and geography, you have to create a continuum between your prelims and the mains. Otherwise, if some people study it from the pre-perspective, that creates a problem. Okay? Chalo. You can try to write this question and send us to us. All the details are there on our Telegram channel. Okay? Next is the last question that we want to discuss today. In the terms of the short-term credit to the agricultural sector, district central cooperative banks deliver more credit in comparison to the scheduled commercial banks and the regional rural banks. Next, one of the most important function of the DCCBs is to provide the funds to the PACS. Now, previously, last year, I have been teaching this urban cooperative banks a lot because of lots of fraud has come. But specifically, those who have been following my lessons from the last year, I kept on saying that please prepare cooperative banks, because that is very critical for this year's examination. And one question has come. This question I will put between the must and the strive category. In between it. May not lie in the one category, but between the must and the strive category. But if you want to crack this exam, you must get these questions right as well. Now, very quickly let us discuss. So within the formal financial intermediaries, cooperative banks lie here, urban and the rural cooperatives. These are the commercial banks, public, private, foreign and differential banks. And the other is NBFC. Now, within the cooperative banks, we have urban cooperatives and the rural cooperatives. Now, urban cooperatives can again be reclassified as some are scheduled in the RBI Act and some are non-scheduled. Similarly, some urban cooperatives are single state and some urban cooperatives operate in the multiple state. This classification, however, not very much important. When it comes to the rural cooperatives, we have the rural cooperatives which gives the short-term loan and some give the long-term loan. Those who give the, we'll see. Now, if we talk about the structure of the cooperatives, 35% are only urban cooperatives, 65% are the rural cooperatives. Among the rural cooperatives, around 50% total assets are by the district central cooperative banks. Then we have the state cooperative banks. Okay? Then we have the primary agricultural societies here, 23%. Okay? So this is what you need to remember among the rural cooperatives. The short term loans and for the long term loans. For the long term loans, we have land banks and cooperative agricultural rural development banks. Not very important. When it comes to short term loans, we have the state cooperative banks, we have the district central cooperative banks, and the primary agricultural credit society. Now, the work of each and every bank, if you see, that's why it is arranged in a hierarchy. These banks give loans to this gives majorly loans to this. So DCB works through PACS, because you can see in the number wise, only 663 district central cooperative banks and the primary agricultural society are around 95,000. So the primary agricultural society takes the money from the majorly money from the DCCBs. Okay? So let's come to the question. So in the term of the short term credit, let us see here. In the terms of the short term credit delivery to the agricultural sector, the district central cooperative banks deliver more credit in comparison to the scheduled commercial and the regional cooperative. This is not right, because the DCCBs does the more work of the providing fund to the PACs, and obviously the network of the scheduled commercial bank and the regional corporate rural banks is far more. You have seen 75% to the RRBs and the 40% PSL to the scheduled commercial banks. So obviously they provide more in comparison to the DCCBs. This is what you have to apply common sense or a practical mind at that point of time. And the second statement is right, obviously. So first statement is wrong. Second statement is right, that the major function of the DCCBs is to provide the credit to the primary agricultural credit societies. So what you need to keep in mind, that's the end of the session. What you need to keep in mind in the economy is the structure. The structure means the framework. Okay, in the banking, we have read these topics. In the finance, we have read these topics. In the, let's say, fiscal capacity, in budget, this is the tax under which this is the provision. For example, honoring the tax platform has come. This lies where? This lies in the direct tax reform. So you need to know where the particular topic is going. That's all. Okay? Let us quickly revise what we have done today. So we started discussion on positive pay mechanism, then priority sector lending, the quotas of the priority sector lending, the bank-wise priority sector lending we have seen, then the certificates, the priority sector lending certificates, national strategy for the financial education, Atal Bimit Vyakti Kalyan Yojana, the general insurance we have seen, then the transparent taxation, honoring the honest, a lot of things that we have seen here. Then broad money, one question we have done, money supply question, this one. Then the question on expansionist monetary policy, very easy question. Then one question on the forex, one question on the Krishna Deva Raya, and the one mains question also there. And lastly, we have done one question here in rural cooperative banks. So with this, we finish our session on economy. As I promised to a lot of questions from Amrita is that I'll take up economy a bit more holistically. And over the period of 7 to 8 months, we'll try to cover a lot of static subjects and static topics as well, but in the context of the current affairs only. Okay? So see you all in the next class. Bye bye for now. Thank you.